Facebook Live. Why the fuck do I look so bright? There we go, that's better. Right. I haven't done one of these in a while. How's it all going? Just get the old camera angle sorted out, there we go. Can't do anything about my face, unfortunately. Looking old and haggard and grey. Never mind, it is what it is. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope you all had a fantastic week. Well, a fantastic few weeks. I haven't really been doing much at all on social media, save for the odd posts now and again. Yeah, just been busy. Hope your guitar playing, everything's all going nice and smooth and you're making some progress and stuff. So yeah, there's literally only a couple of questions today that I was going to address. One of them is one of the most frequently asked questions out of all frequently asked questions, which I'll get around to in a sec. What else has been going on? Not a lot really, just the usual kind of lesson stuff, and I've been writing some music, which is pretty cool, pretty stressful as well. Stressful in many ways, in that my brain works better than my hands sometimes, and maybe that's part of getting old, maybe it's part of being a bit rusty, I don't know. It is what it is, but there we go. So yeah, if you've got any questions or comments or anything, chuck them down below and I'll read them live here on Facebook as we go. Excuse the noise of the rain in the background if you can hear that. Not a lot I can do about that, unfortunately. Yeah, so let's crack on. Let's have a look at the first question. Well, I say look at the first question. It was something that somebody asked me earlier this week, and that was had I listened to the new Yngwie Malmsteen song, and what do I reckon of it? Yes, I have listened to it, all of about once, 1.5 times, something like that. So the whole neoclassical shred thing isn't really my thing. Hasn't been for a while. Probably for about the last, I don't know, 10 to 12 years or so. I haven't really paid much attention to that world. I haven't really listened to anything coming out of that kind of genre, as it were. But yeah, I did check it out because I heard a few people making a fuss about it and stuff. Wolves at the Door, I believe it's called. And yeah, like I said, neoclassical shred stuff isn't really my thing, at least not really my thing anymore. Was briefly for a while, helps get like the technique and stuff together a little bit, I suppose. But I gotta say, like I just didn't really enjoy it. That's just my personal opinion. What I did think of it was, or one thing that I can talk about with some confidence at least, is the fact that the timing was all over the place. It seemed, it literally sounded as though, say, Yngwie had recorded all his guitar parts completely separately to a band, or vice versa, because there was some, like the drums were out of time. It just sounded really like disjointed and yeah, just not very cohesive. That would be probably my biggest criticism of it. Like I said, music-wise, not really my cup of tea, but you know, his playing is kind of all over the place anyway by nature. But yeah, the rest just didn't lock in with any of the other instruments, in my humble opinion. Although, yeah, like I said, I can say that with some confidence. When I was listening to it, I was like, this is out of time. Speaking of timing, we did, all my students did a bonus session, so I'm going to be doing these bonus sessions with my students each month, just a little way of saying thank you for sticking around during the whole pandemic thing, I guess. Quite a few students had to stop lessons because of financial reasons, personal reasons, and stuff, and that's absolutely fine. But for the guys and girls that have stuck around, I wanted to do a bonus session each month. So going through some of the most tricky topics to do with training, things that are going to be really beneficial to them. So the first one we did was on tension and timing. And so I talked about some ways you can improve your kind of overall sense of timing and how to not play with as much tension. And then one of the questions I've asked again this week was about how can I play with less tension? How can I understand what's going on there? So one exercise that I would use in that sense to try and work out whether you're using too much tension is to deliberately play with more tension. So deliberately hit the notes harder, deliberately press the notes down harder on the fretboard, go over the top with the tension and then back all the way off and play with as little tension as possible. So when I say as little tension as possible, I mean literally you're hardly making a sound because your hands are so floppy. You can't press the notes down properly. So you want just enough tension, just enough the optimum amount of pressure to make the note sound. Really depends on what you're doing. Again, if you're doing bent note vibrato or a bent note with vibrato, you're going to use more tension in both hands. You're just going to use more power, I suppose, as well. If you're chugging away, if you're smashing into power chords, you're going to use a little bit more tension. It's about controlling the dynamics. Another thing you can do to help with tension is to practice just going between a couple of notes. And when you finish the first note, as you're transferring the weight from one finger to another finger to play the second note, try and keep the first finger as relaxed as possible. So I know that some people do those spider exercises and stuff. Honestly, you don't have to do it with that. You can just do it with whatever you're practicing. So if you're practicing some kind of lick or an arpeggio or a scale or whatever, a riff, then practice it transferring and relaxing on and off of notes. And to start with, you might have to do that as slowly as possible to see and feel if you're doing that correctly. But there's a couple of tips there. That's what I would recommend there. Bear with me one sec. Just going to wet the old whistle. Cheers, everyone. Yes, it's a little drop of whiskey. No, I'm not a high-functioning alcoholic. I just like a little drink at the weekends now and again. So yeah, if you want to get in on the bonus classes and that as well, you don't actually have to be a student. You can chuck us at as little as a £5 over on buymeacoffee.com/Jimmy Alford. Well remembered, Jimmy. And you can have access to those bonus monthly sessions as well. So we'll be covering a range of guitar topics, a range of guitar topics for training. And we're going to do some guided guitar practice sessions and stuff as well in the future. We're also going to be doing some similar to can't even talk today, too much whiskey. Similar to guided guitar practice, we're going to be doing some sessions where some practice sessions with my students. So actually I might keep that stum for now, in case any other competitors are listening, getting ideas, bastards. Anyway, it's all good. Right, so on to the main one. So this is one of the most frequently asked questions ever that I get from prospective guitar students, and that is, do I need to know how to read music to play guitar? Or some people it will be declarative. They'll say it's a statement. They'll say, I can't play guitar, or I can't have guitar lessons because I can't read music. You don't have to know how to read music to play guitar, is the short answer to that. So there's obviously tabs which you can use, which is very similar to reading music, but it's not notation. It's not standard notation. So, is it important? Yeah, it can be. It depends on what your goals are, depends on what your instrument is. So for guitar, it's not as important. But if you're playing, I would say, a lot of the other instruments, then yeah, knowing a little bit at least about how music is written is going to help with your communication with other musicians. It's like the language, isn't it? It's the written language of musicians. So again, if one of your goals is to be able to confidently sight read pieces of music, then yeah, you need to know how to read music. So my story with reading music is, for the first let's say 2 or 3 years of playing, I could barely read tab, to be honest. I learned by ear. I learned from just listening to songs and basically trying to imitate what I was hearing. So I didn't get to learn how to read notation until I went to college, and even then I was pretty bad at it, to be honest. So I learned it up to a level where I could basically follow melodies and I knew how to read rhythm, and that was pretty much it. And then it seemed like college was over, so I was done. So in the 25 years since that life event, being at college, bloody hell, I sound old. Since then, I've only ever had to sight read probably twice. I don't think it's hindered me in any way. I've had to pass up a couple of opportunities because I don't know how to sight read. So there was one where I was offered a job where the guitar player called in sick basically for a series of shows at a theatre, and they wanted me to play guitar. I think it was for Greece. I don't know. I might have got that completely wrong. It was some musical, obviously, anyway, in the theatre. And one, musical theatre, not really my thing. Not really my forte, not really my cup of tea. And also, wasn't confident in my sight reading abilities whatsoever. So I had to pass it up. I had to pass up a paying gig for that. Like I said, maybe doing some outreach work with some music charities and stuff. I've had to sight read, but that's about it. So in the last 25 years, as a working musician, as a guitarist, I've only had to use it a couple of times. Of course, for other instruments, it's worth being able to read at least a little bit of music. So to spin the question back round to you, I would say, do you need to know how to read music for what you want to do? Because without knowing what your specific goals are, what your intent is, I don't know if you want to know how to read music. So some people say, well, if you wanted to be, say, like a session musician, for example, similar to what I was talking about just now, then you probably have to know how to read music. So, well, first of all, think of all your guitar heroes. Think of all the dudes that you like. Do they know how to sight read? Do they know how to read music? And then I would take a couple of guys like, let's say, Slash or Jimmy Page, for example, who have both been session musicians, as well as obviously amazing, iconic guitar players in the rock world at least. Do they know how to read music? Well, Jimmy Page famously was a session musician and didn't know how to read music. He just blagged his way through it. Slash has been a session musician, played on tons of other people's records and stuff, doesn't know how to read music. Steve Stevens is another good example from the 80s. We're using all examples from the 80s here. Doesn't know how to read music. Adrian Belew, who's done Zappa, he's worked with Bowie, he's the guitar player in Talking Heads. He's a prolific session musician. He doesn't know how to read music. He taught himself. So he taught himself several instruments by ear. So yeah, that's the main point I want to get across really, is do you need to know how to read music to be able to play what you want to play? You certainly don't need to be able to read music to learn guitar. Okay, so if you're the sort of person that wants to just come home and just riff out and just play, Metallica songs, AC/DC songs, or whatever, 100% do not need to know how to read music. If you want to be able to just play with your mates in a band, 100% don't need to know how to read music. If you wanted to play with other types of musicians, then it may be of some benefit to know a little bit about reading music. So for the students that I've had that have gone off to college or uni to study music, I've never really taken them through much sight reading stuff. I know it will be beneficial to them to at least have a little bit of knowledge about sight reading, especially when you go to do it like university level or diploma level. As far as I'm aware, you don't have to do a lot of it for the entry exam. For the rock school exams these days, I'm pretty sure you don't have to know how to sight read. When I did my grade 8, you didn't have to sight read. So yeah, again, it totally depends on what you're doing, it totally depends on who you're playing with, but it's not an issue, it's not a hang-up, it's something that you can work around. I mean, if you can speak on your instrument, at least, then you don't necessarily need to know how to read music. If it's just, like I said, just for your own pleasure, you're just playing with mates, just riffing out, definitely don't need to know how to read music. Really that simple. It's the simple answer to it, which I've probably taken about 10 minutes to get to, but short answer is no. Depends on what you want to do. I would say reading rhythm is important, or it can be important, at least for when you're following tabs, especially like interactive tabs and stuff. Yeah, of course you can hear them as they're going, but teach yourself a little bit about how rhythms sound. That can go a long way. Most of all, use your ears. Like, spend more time training your ears than your eyes, because obviously, playing an instrument, playing music, you're using your ears predominantly. So perhaps spend a little bit more time doing that than worrying about reading music. Cool. That was a short one, wasn't it? So yeah, if anyone's got any other questions or anything, ping them into the old comments and I'll read them